What started out to be a very quick tutorial, after many mistakes, obstacles, hours of editing, voiceovers, I decided that I was going to take all of that mess and turn it into something masterful. 13 tips to help you through some of the same struggles. I call it the productive struggle. And at the end, my hubby surprised me and fixed one of them. Find out which one it is. But for now, come on, let's do this. Before I can ask you to muddle through the mess, I wanted to show you my finished project and hopefully entice you to stay and experience the ups and downs and see the finished project. Turns out there was a method to the madness. Of course, I'm just drawing my grids on my grid journal. I do have a plastic template, and then I'm using some cards that I have cut out, and I just trace around them. What I love is using these napkins from ninniesnapkins.com. This one is called Snowman Holding Robin, and I tear it apart and I use pieces and parts of it all over. I just do it as I go. And as usual, none of these things that I tear off will be wasted. I'll use them somewhere on the project. The second one that I've used is called Simple Season Welcome. And this is new to me to use in my grid journal. And I tried to pick some napkins that had matching color palettes. And the one on the far left is called Send You a Letter. This is a misting water bottle spray that I use to constitute my watercolors. And it has a continuous spray. I love it. And this continuous spray bottle actually is one I am going to have for my January giveaway. Did someone say giveaway? What? So I've got my paints, what I feel is the correct color palette. They're kind of inky, runny, and I just start putting it on the paper. I don't do it in any particular order. Again, if you've watched my videos, you know I just free flow here. You do not have to be a painter to do this. You have to allow yourself to have some fun and some creativity. So it was about at this point that I felt I made my first mistake. Look at me finger paint. So I grabbed a fan brush for some reason and I'm like, here, let's do some splatter. And right here, bam! Frustration fist! That's the kind of thing I usually edit out. That's what this video ends up being about. Because of so many frustrating moments, I was inspired to change from a tutorial to some of my favorite helpful tips. Tip number 1, when you think you've made a mistake, keep going. I pick that Ninnie's Napkin Snowman up and I look at it and I remember why I'm doing this. What is my inspiration? I'm not trying to become independently wealthy on a YouTube channel. I'm trying to express myself, enjoy myself, and just continue to play. I'm going to give myself permission to keep going. Tip number 1, when you think you've made a mistake, keep going. Give it some time. After I let these dry and I looked close up, I loved it. Look at that puddling effect. And I love the puddles. This, however, does eventually lead into tip number 5. But not before I gather some of my favorite stamps and start to work. Of course, in my grid journaling, you've seen that I always use some stamps. I love script stamps and a permanent ink. That is very important. I have learned that. How did I learn it? By doing it the wrong way. So as I put these stamps on, I'm reminded to tell you that struggle sometimes is viewed as a sign of things going badly. But that's not always true, because I always want smooth sailing. But is smooth sailing what we get always in life? No. And it's not what we get in art either. Because easy and learning don't always go hand in hand. So just let it be an experience. Have a good time. Let yourself keep moving. Guess what? It's just paper. You can start again. I'm laying down some of my favorite ink stamps. But in doing it, right in here, tip number 2. Work on a flat supported surface. Look at that paper going up and down. The reason was I'm trying to keep the paper inside of a frame, so I'm compromising. Luckily, grid journaling doesn't have to be exact, but do what I say, not what you're seeing me do. Work on a flat surface. Tip number 3. Sometimes you have to do something different. I wasn't liking the red, so I grabbed a different brush. Christy Rice Paint Crush. She has a set of brushes that I ordered. This one is the fine liner called Remembering Joy. That's the name of the brush. So I started laying it down differently. It gave some finer lines, different textures. At least try something different. Be willing to make a change. Notice how badly I need a flat surface. Watching videos and looking at things like you're doing is using the left logical side of your brain. It's called capturing information. Until you pick up your pencil, pick up your paint, and start doing, you're not using the right side, which is create. We need to capture and create. So I'm taking my focal points and I'm placing them back on my grid journal the way I originally planned. And this tip number 4 is to work from the top left down to the bottom right. If you're right-handed, it would be the opposite if you were left-handed. Notice how much Mod Podge I end up putting on that top left corner? It's a lot, but that actually works its way into being tip number 8. This napkin is called Send You a Letter. There are just no words for the beauty of Ninny's napkins and how they can be used in many projects, grid journaling just being one of them. Snowman Holding Robin. Man, if this was chocolate, I'd eat it. I love these napkins so much. Big thumbs up. And I'm working along, feeling so good and so great, adding those little pieces when along comes tip number 5. Look at that splatter. Oh my gosh, I'm going to Mod Podge over it and look at it smear. So tip number 5 is don't add splatter too soon. Regardless of what you're doing, the splatter needs to come at the end, because any splatter that I did in any great detail, I lost it in this process. But guess what? I learned something from it. Don't splatter too soon. I have to take a moment though and just absorb that napkin at the top of the page. Simple Season Welcome. It is so beautiful. So I add some more pieces, give it some drying time, and frustration again. I realize I don't really like the red. So tip number 6, do something that's worked before. I love the Distress Ink Oxide and the depth that it brings. So being frustrated with that red, I'm pulling on a previous victory, something that I really love, and I'm going to lay down this Distress Ink Oxide Vintage Photo by Tim Holtz. So this brings me to tip number 7, which is embrace the struggle. There's nothing wrong with having those moments of frustration, because sometimes they turn out like this, beautiful. How is it a mistake when it naturally evolves into this? I call it the productive struggle. When I was little, I tried to help a butterfly break out of its chrysalis because I saw it struggling, and in the end, it didn't help. It's necessary for that butterfly to struggle to get out. The reason is there's a chemical that's pushed through the veins of those wings that allow it to become strong so that when it does fully break out, it can fly. Temporary confusion or frustration aren't things to be avoided. because that's what makes our productive struggle so effective. When we try to solve problems or look for unexpected or novel ways to deal with something, it's not a sign of weakness or incompetence. It's how our brains are supposed to feel when they're on fire with activity. Look how that upper left corner resists the ink. That's because I had laid down a lot of Mod Podge earlier, but I had forgotten that it created that texture. So tip number 8, journal your journey. Somewhere, document. Write it down in a book. Create some sort of written record of the things that you love and that work. Tip number 8, journal your journey. I have to take a moment and just admire the beauty of this Send You a Letter and how it turned out. And the other one, Simple Season Welcome. Again, if this were chocolate, I'd eat it. Preparing to put down my sentiments, I use Beacon's Fabrifix glue, and I store it in a Sugar Bell icing container. And I have a long stainless steel straight pen that I put in it to keep it from leaking. But look around the head of that pen. I didn't pay attention, and I was presented with this glue blob. Thankfully, it was in the old jar. But tip number 9, be sure that you put that pen back in and there's no room or other glue product around the top of it so that it will not leak. Problems and solutions. Awesome. But I don't want to leave out the why, the heart of this project. I picked out the sentiments that said, the sweetest of memories that shine and sparkle in my heart of hearts. I dream of going back home. Emphasizing the sentiments using Master's Touch Fine Art Studio brushes. So feeling creative, I grabbed my light and fluffy modeling paste and what? Not light and fluffy? Dried up. Tip number 10, put your lids back on your product tightly, because light and fluffy modeling paste doesn't work unless it is light and fluffy. Where can you get light and fluffy modeling paste? That's right, Ninny'sNapkins.com. They carry this product. They have a great price point, and I highly suggest you get it to add some texture and some fun to your next project. On a side note, what is under my book? Is it a strong flat surface? I'll tell you more about that at the end. And I had an injury. Nothing exciting. The main thing, tip number 10, is secure the lids to your product. So I started adding some different stamp colors on the top of my light and fluffy modeling paste, and I didn't like it. Tip number 11 is continue doing something until you find what you love. What do I love? I love the gold. The metallic gold watercolor. I started adding that, and this project just started coming to life. What does it mean to keep going until you love it? It's turning it up by 1 degree more. At 211 degrees, water's hot. But at 212 degrees, it boils. It produces steam. It yields power. That 1 degrees can make all the difference. It takes what you're doing from good to great. It's when you begin to own your results. Yes! Hey, now this is where I draw the line. Wah, wah. I use a calligraphy pen and I use the thin side to loosely get a line-ish around each of those boxes because I want them to stand out. But this is loose and free, not tight. Loosey-goosey. Tip number 12. Cover your focal points before you splatter. I used a dark splatter and a gold splatter. but I didn't want anything to get in the way of that focal point. I wanted nothing to obstruct the beauty of this. I went back with my Stabilo Boss highlighter. I have several colors. This is the gray one, and I just wanted to give a little bit more oomph to the bottom and sides of those beautiful sentiments. My finishing touches usually end with a light, airy touch going around every single grid and just giving it the feeling of thread or old-timey sewing. So this is final tip number 13. Do not skip the finishing touches. Look at what a difference that makes on every single grid. I love it. And yep, if it were chocolate, you know what I'd do. So I share my finished product with you. It's countless hours of the ups and downs of creating, processing, editing, and then repurposing an entire video in hopes of inspiring you to figure out, do more of what works and a little less of what doesn't. Oh yeah, about that flat solid surface that I needed to lay my book on. About halfway through this project, my hubby made one for me. I'll keep him. And ended up. Quit talking like a hick. Thready is not a freaking word. Crap. What have I... Oh, Jesus, take the wheel.